Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 of the 224 Predator engine build. And this is where we left off last time. That block I had ground off on one side. And I went back through it and took some more off. And here oh yeah, you could say I've worked on the top quite a bit and the bottom. I've tried to blend that in a little bit so it didn't look like a deep gash up top, but man, it did take a lot of metal out, and it was a pretty painstaking process to get all that ground out of there. That rod needs a lot of room to clear. And one thing I noticed while I was down here in these looking down in these oil drains, there was some grit captured down in there from around the drain plug. So I'm going to pull these plugs out and spray this stuff out. I noticed this grit down in here, and if you grind yours, make sure you pull your drain plugs out. Look at that. Yeah, that's a lot of grinding, and that's metal shaving. Now here I'm just cleaning out, spraying some of this stuff on there. Carb cleaner. I picked this stuff up at Walmart, and usually I'll go through a couple of cans on one small engine build because I clean everything off, like, you know, and it works good, and it's cheap. I don't know, I think it's called Super Tech or something like that. And we just get it at Walmart. If you don't have a Walmart where you're at, I'm sure you can find some kind of discount place that's got stuff like that. But yeah, I noticed, you know, I had covered this bearing up and everything, but I noticed when I turned it, it had a little grit feel to it. So that's really disheartening. I'm gonna have to go through and flush that bearing out to make sure it doesn't have any grit. And you guys know those bearings aren't that good anyway. You can buy a good replacement bearing for these engines, but you know, I'm gonna try to stick with this. I've got enough in this thing as it is, and if that bearing's gonna be okay, then I'm just gonna keep it. But you know, you do have the option. There are replacement bearings for these, and they're a whole lot better. They really are. But if this one will work, hey, I'm gonna go with it. And this has just been a never-ending process trying to clean this thing up after grinding. I didn't really mind it too bad the first time, but the second time, it's yeah, it's starting to get old. Putting a little lube on the crank here. And I'm getting ready to start checking again, see if my clearances are okay this time. And yep, I'm gonna pour a little pre-lube in the bearing. I've got him flushed out real good, but that means it's really dry right now. So oil it back up. Oh yeah, turn smooth. That's good. Now I'm gonna go ahead and use these little cheap wrist pin retainers that came with the piston. I don't like these, and I've ordered a set that's a little different, and they're a whole lot better. But I'm gonna go ahead and use these because, you know, they work. Okay, they'll keep the wrist pin in place. But I just don't like that little wire looking thing. I'd rather have they're difficult to put in, they're difficult to take out, and they're not really, they don't have the tension that I like for a wrist pin retainer. Now they're okay. They're not too bad to put in. The one side is easy. You can push it in a little further and then push it back out with the wrist pin, and it'll click in place. And the other side, you know, you just got to use. I'm using a little flat tip screwdriver, small screwdriver, just making sure that that retainer is in the groove. And I don't know how you guys do it, but I always check at least 3 times. I'm really paranoid about this because I have lost engines before because of a wrist pin retainer popped out. Okay, now I'm getting ready to clean these are the rod bolts from the EC Pinnacle rod, the billet rod. And what I'm doing here, I'm using some carb cleaner and I'm cleaning those threads. I mean, clean, squeaky clean, no oil whatsoever. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to use some, now this is Lucas. Well, this is a special blend of oil for, it's actually for machine guns. But what it does, it's got a hard graphite lubricant in there. And it stays thin and fluid to like minus 27 degrees. It's really good stuff. It's kind of pricey, but hey, I use it for this and other things too. And it's it's the best, and that's all you can say. It's the best. Now you can use any kind of light oil, like 3-in-1 oil, or like a light hydraulic oil would probably work great, or even Marvel Mystery oil. That's a light grade oil. Now here's the way I do mine. I'm getting ready to torque my rod and rod bolts down for the first time, and I'm going to do the preload. It's kind of, you're going to stretch the rod bolts a little bit. But, you guys follow the manufacturer instructions however they want you to do it. Now, the way I do it may not be exactly what, they want you to do. So, now this is just how I build mine. And, other people do it differently, and that's fine. I'm not here to criticize anybody on how they build. I'm just here to show you how I do it. And some guys have a better way of doing things, and I understand what works for them may not work for me, but what works for me may not work for them. So everybody to each his own. But now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start off at around 25 to 30 inch-pounds, and I'm going to keep on going up. I'll jump up to 50. And what I'm aiming for is to get to 150 inch-pounds on this rod. And what I'll do, I'll keep going up 25 inch-pounds at a time. So, as soon as I get the up to 50, then I'll set it to 75. Once it clicks on 75, I'll go up to 100. And I'll just keep, going up a little gradually until I get to 150. And once I do, I leave mine sitting for a little while. And also, it may be worth mentioning, this is just one of my little pet peeves that I have. I like that thing to be at room temperature. Now, my shop is not too bad cold today, but the crankshaft, the connecting rod, and the piston spent the night in the house last night, so they were warm. And I think, I like for my parts to be around 70 or 80 degrees when I'm torquing them. And, cold weather does funny things to metal and plastic. Now here, I'm starting to get serious now because I'm bringing out the paper towels. When you see me dragging out the paper towels and start wiping down parts, that means that it's starting to get serious. And again, I'm going to apply a little gun oil on my rod bolts. Now I'm going to go ahead and start placing these rings on the piston. And, you know, I had these down in the block earlier. And I've tossed them back in the box. And I don't know how, man, but every time these things, they get all wound up like that, like a magician's rings. But you just got to unwind them. And the way I do it, you know, I kind of put one side in and then run it around. And then when I get the remaining side in, I'll put my fingernail under the ring and I'll kind of guide it over the edge of the piston. And the reason I do that is because, you know, I was putting a set of rings on a new Wiseco piston that I paid quite a bit for. And when I put that ring down the side, and I, you know, before I didn't have my fingernail under it, it made a long scratch down the side of my brand new piston, and I really hated that. But, you know, most of you guys know, you know, when you put your rings on, you just kind of stagger them. You don't, as long as your ring gaps aren't lined up, I think you'll be okay. Now, everybody's got their own preference the way they do them. And, you know, my preference, I don't like to align anything up to the front or the back of the bore. I'll kind of put everything kind of off to the side, the wrist pin area of the pistons. Of course, you know, I don't know to line them up. Like the top ring and the second ring, I'll have them on opposite sides and stuff. But you know, if you hadn't put rings on before, just you look, the black ring will be the middle ring, and the ring that looks like kind of shiny, that will be your top ring. And it's easy. You know, most of the rings will have instructions in most cases, and there'll be a little mark to show you on the top of the ring to show you that side is up. So it's not hard. Now, this is what I'm using. Now, you've seen this AMSOIL. Now, I'm not sponsored by them, and I'm not sponsored by Lucas. But what I do, when it's cold like this, I'll use about 1/3 of the Lucas engine treatment. And, you know, I'll per 1/3 of Lucas and 2/3 of oil. Now, this is how I ended up with the block. This is quite a bit of material taken out of that block. But, you know, that stuff is really thick. So I would recommend, especially if your shop is kind of cold, take it in the house and set it near a heater vent. Let it get warm. Now this is really warm, but it looks like maple syrup or something when it comes out of there. But you know, I apply a general pre-lube on everything with this, and I'm a firm believer. You know. And like I said, I'm not sponsored by those guys. The only reason why I'm using the AMSOIL bottles because I had some left over from an oil change. You know, I'm fine with Mobil 1, any synthetic. I like all synthetics, but a little mixture of synthetic oil and Lucas goes a long way. And in the summertime, you know, you can get by with, you know, mixing it 50-50. But in the wintertime, you better stick to about 1/3 Lucas and the rest oil. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, everything goes downhill from there with that ring compressor. I hate those things. These things are terrible. And I've got a friend that's really sharp on this 3D printing stuff. And he is working on something now. I'm not going to get into details, but we may have a fix for this problem right here. I really dislike these old ring compressors, and this is the wrong one. My old one was rusted, and for smaller engines, and the other ones, the good ones I have, are too small for this piston. So this is like, you know, what you would use if you built a small block Chevy or something. it's really wrong for this, but I'm going to try. And, you know, you'll probably see that I'm going to fail, but it's okay. These are low tension rings, and that means you don't have to squeeze them very tight, and you can put them right down in the bore. Now, what I'm trying to do here is line that sleeve up on that ring compressor. And, you know, it always happens. This is why I hate these things. There is no telling how many piston rings have been broken during an install because of these ring compressors. You know, I think some of the best ring compressors I ever used were these tapered ones. But, you know, those are really expensive. And, you know, I used to do them for the small block Chevy engines. And, you know, if you do several, it's worth buying them. But for these, I don't even think they make the tapered ring compressors. It's really neat. It's a little piece that sits on top of the cylinder bore, and you just kind of line it up, and you slide your piston down in there, and it just, the taper, it kind of compresses the ring as you push it down into the bore. Man, they're great. But this thing here, it's just, you know, these are a nightmare. Yeah, and what I'm doing here, I'm trying to tap that ring compressor down where it's touching the top of the block. Now, that's one of the main ways to break a ring on these things when you're using these things. Guys will be tapping their piston down like I'm doing there, and that ring compressor will not be touching the top of the block. And so while you're tapping that down, your ring pops out on the top of the block, and bang, you break it. And it happens, you know. It just if you haven't broken a ring with one of these, then you've not installed any. But, you know, I finally gave up. I said, that's okay. These are low tension rings. I'll just squeeze them one at a time. And it takes a bit of patience. You know, it does. But it's probably, putting them in by hand is probably the safest way to do it. Everything gets coated. Everything. And, you know, I'm not going to make you guys sit here and watch me tighten down this rod. I know you've seen me do it a million times so far on the pre-assemblies when we were checking parts. So we'll skip the torque. But that's what I was waiting for. And good news. The Bonsai 265 cam clears that EC rod without any being cut off the cam whatsoever. I love it. I did not have to grind anything off the cam. And if you can make out in there, you know, it's about 1/8 of an inch clearance. It's quite a bit of clearance between the rod and the cam. I was tickled to death. Now, I lost some footage here. And so we jumped straight into the head is already on. The side cover's already on. I apologize for that. But, you know, today I learned what a iPhone catastrophic error is. But you guys know the deal on this. This is adjusting the valves. You got a 10 millimeter at the top that locks it down. And then your adjusting nut is 14 millimeter. Now what I did, this cam recommends a valve lash of 3 hot. And it was pretty cool in the shop. So what I set them on was 5 cold. And of course, you know, when it warms up, that gap will close up some. Plus, you know, with the cam, we're not going to be we're not going to be closing up the gap too much because it's a brand new cam and it's going to break in. So you'll get a little more gap that way. But now I'm having to remove, this is one of the intake studs, and I'm going to have to get both of these off because we're going to go with a Mikuni clone carburetor, and it's a 26 millimeter. I found these on Amazon, and they're really cheap. They're actually, they're not bad carburetors, but we'll get to that in a minute. Now, some guys was asking me, you know, when I said I was going to delete the flywheel key, and some guys was asking how to do that. And now this is what you do, or this is what I do. I take and put some valve grinding compound or valve lapping compound on the crankshaft and a little bit inside the flywheel. And I'll slide that up on there, no key in there, and just work it back and forth. And it's just like you're grinding. You can feel it grit, you know. You just pull it out and then push it back in and it'll grit. When you keep grinding back and forth until it feels smooth, and then you pull it out. It's just like grinding a valve, except you're lapping the flywheel to the crankshaft. And what that's going to do is going to give you a good sealing surface. It's going to make where the flywheel taper touches the crankshaft taper a perfect fit. Not only a machined fit, but a perfectly lapped fit. And once you get that kind of fit, you don't need a flywheel key. You just put your flywheel up there anywhere you want it. You tighten it down, and she'll stay. The only thing to remember, of course, this is just common sense too. You know, you got to get all that grit off there. But take a look at it. You see how that dark gray area on that crankshaft? That's where I've lapped it in. That's what you want to look. That's what you want your crank to look like after you're finished lapping the flywheel in. And again, I'm using some carb spray here to clean the threads and any grit. Now, I don't want any of that valve lapping compound left in there. No key. Lapped. Looks good. Crank looks good. Now, all you got to do, guys, you just put your flywheel on there. Now, you can line it up to the mark, you know, exactly just by eye. Or you can, if you turn it counterclockwise, you're gonna retard the timing. And if you turn it clockwise you're gonna advance the timing. Now I'm talking about your ignition timing, because you're gonna be moving that magnet on the flywheel either closer to top dead center, before top dead center, or after, depending on how you turn that flywheel when you mount it. Now, this is something that was different. These Predator 224s, they've got a wider side cover, and they also have a that starter cup is very long now. And I mean, you know, you almost need, you know, octopus fingers to get up in there and start that flywheel nut. And I don't know why they did that. And here's how I tighten my flywheel. It's a little noisy, but yeah, she ain't going nowhere. Now let's get this coil on. And I'll tell you guys, I was planning on using the aluminum flywheel on this, and I got to checking that thing out, and I'm not comfortable. It's got a defect in it, a little flaw, and I'm not comfortable running it. So I've ordered a billet, and we will be going with a billet. But I wanted to get this thing put together. Today's Wednesday, and I wanted to get this thing done by Wednesday so I could upload it and get everything finished. Now, what I've got there is just some cardboard that came in the box with the Predator engine. And it's around 25 thousandths thick. I measured it. It might be a little bit thicker than 25. But I just threw the good old Harbor Freight dial caliper on there. And I think she said around 25. And that's fine. We're not going to turn this flywheel hardly anything. I just want to get the engine running. And when the billet flywheel comes in, we'll just... We'll turn up maybe a few RPM then. And here's my LG plug. The gap is really tight. I'm gonna set mine about 35. I always like about 35. These coils are really strong, and you know they don't have any trouble jumping a 35 gap at all. But I'm guessing I didn't measure it, but I'm guessing this is probably about a 15-20 thousandths gap in there. It was really tight. 35 now. Yeah, I had went over to get me some anti-seize to put on that spark plug, and after looking around for about 5 minutes, I figured out, uh-oh, it's at the other shop. So we'll just put this one in there without any anti-seize. I think it'll be okay. Now, also, guys, when I put this head on, I did not install the 26-pound valve springs. I left the stock valve springs on, and I did that intentionally. One, I want to break the new cam in with the lighter valve springs. And two, now this is the Mikuni clone carburetor. And I got this one off Amazon. You know, it's around 50 bucks. And the reason why I went with this one, it comes with a bunch of accessories with it. But it also comes with the jet kit. And I mean, they send everything. You get all the hardware. You get the intake, all the mounting hardware, the little nuts and bolts, fuel line, a fuel filter, your gaskets. Heck, mine even had a couple of wrenches and a couple of Allen wrenches and a wrench. So, you know, I think it was worth it. Just these jets here, that jet kit, that's like 10 or 12 bucks by itself. And that was included with the carb. So, you know, hey, I was tickled to death. Well, you know, anytime I can save money, I'm tickled. And yeah, if you've never put one of these on, don't worry, it's easy. You know, the D shape gasket, of course, you know, and the D shape end on the intake goes to the head. So it's no big deal. These fasteners are kind of small, and if you have fat fingers like this guy, you may find it a little difficult to get them started, but it can be done. And, you know, it just takes a little fiddling, getting everything bolted up, but it's pretty straightforward. You just got your intake bolts to the head. There's a little plastic spacer with a rubber O-ring gasket. And then that bolts to the carb. It's pretty straightforward, guys. I'm going to move you guys over here a little bit to the side where maybe you can get a better view. Yeah. You know, I told you guys I was going to try and get some different lighting and stuff, and yeah, okay. Yeah, that's much worse. Well, looks like I'm shading the I'm shading the engine now without I'm not even realizing it because I'm busy. I want to get this thing done. I'm ready. But the footage that I lost was mainly checking the piston ring end gap, and you know, to do that I push the rings down into the cylinder one at a time and use the piston, push it down, you know, a couple inches or so. Then you check the ring gap, and both of these were set at 8, and that, you know, that's okay. That's fine. Now, what I've got that little, I don't know what they call it, a phenolic spacer or something, but it's kind of just like a plastic spacer. And it's got an O-ring that fits in a groove, and you can't see it because it's too dark. I don't know why I'm standing between the light and what we're trying to see. Genius. Okay, I'm just doing some little assembly here. I think trying to get that spacer to hold on there while I start these nuts on this side. You know, I mean, if anybody gets small hands to do this stuff, I mean, you'd be great at it. With me, I'm working with hands like Wreck-It Ralph, you know, and it's really difficult to get a hold of the small stuff. But once we get it up there, that'll be it. We'll get him in there and tighten him down. But these little carburetors, I mean, I love them. I love them. It's a Mikuni knockoff. Okay, it's a manufacturer. It's made in, I'm sure it's made in China, and there are some of those Chinese carbs that say Mikuni on them, and I think they are licensed by Mikuni to manufacture their carburetors. And I'll tell you what, I don't see any difference between the one that says Mikuni and the other one that doesn't. As long as you don't leave ethanol fuel, like the E10 or E15 fuel in them, you'll be fine. That's the only thing that kills carburetors, I think, is this ethanol in the gasoline these days. You know, and you can remove that. There's lots of videos on YouTube that shows you how to remove it. You know, I may do another one and add it to the millions that's already on, but it's really simple. Now, the way these carbs come apart, you just unscrew that top, and the slide pulls up out of there. You'll take your throttle cable and stick down through this groove, and it holds on to the bottom. Of course, yeah, you got to put the top of the carb in the spring in first. But it's a very simple little device, and you know, the slide carbs are much better than a regular standard type carburetor because they do not have a throttle shaft or a butterfly still in the bore. When you open these things up wide open, that slide raises up and that bore is completely open. There's nothing blocking air. They really flow a lot of air. And the only thing I could say that, you know, just a little advice on these things is be careful when you screw the top on your carb, because some of these brand carburetors don't have the greatest of threads up there. So make sure you double check, triple check that you've got everything started straight. You know, don't cross thread the top of the carb on. If you do, you'll mess it up. And are we working? Yep, we're working. Oh, I love that slide carb. I love those. Tried to run one years ago on a pulling tractor. They caught me. And you guys know the routine on this gas tank. You just set it down on there. There's one bolt in the back, two 10 millimeter nuts in the front. I'm not going to make you go through and watch me do all that again. Yeah, putting the gas tank on is easier than taking it off was. Now, I'm working on some stuff here. I've got the fuel line hooked up. I've got too much fuel line here. I'm going to trim some of this stuff off. We've got plenty of fuel line from the Predator tank, but not enough to get to the Mikuni carb by itself. Luckily, we got some clear line that came with the Mikuni carb. So I'm just going to trim off a little bit off the end of that, kind of shorten it up a little bit. And then I want to keep this filter up here fairly close to the tank. I'll shorten the Predator fuel line too, just nip off a little bit. Yeah, that'll be about right. Put the clamp on. And we should be good to go for fuel. Time for the side cover. And I didn't show taking this off before. Actually, I think I did film it, but either I deleted it or I lost it. But it's just 4 bolts. There are 2 up top and 2 on the bottom, and they're let's see, I think they're 8 millimeter heads. So I'm not gonna make you watch me start all those bolts or anything. I'll just run through here and tighten them up real quick. And yeah, it would be nice if you guys could see what I'm doing there. Raise it up. There we go. Yep. 2 on the bottom. And I don't know what the torque spec are on those. Just snug them down. I mean, you know, I wouldn't. Now, this is a header I purchased on Amazon. And when I first got it in, I was looking at oh, this is a good looking header. It's 2-stage. Not bad. And this is just, it didn't come with a gasket or any hardware. This is a gasket off the old Predator muffler. But when I started to put it on there, fitting required. Yeah, I had to cut out one side of the one hole to get this thing to mount up. So I don't know, I might be taking that off the list down there. But I did get it fitted, and I did get it mounted on there. And this little Mikuni knockoff, it comes with a little cone air filter, which I don't really like these little air filters. I'll get a bigger one later on. But for now, it'll be okay. Just want to put that on there in case it pops back. So first pull. Oh, it's got more compression. Ooh. Oh yeah. It seems like the throttle's a little snappy. Oh boy, is that compression. Ooh. Okay, let's turn this choke off. Well, she's a runner. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. See you next time.